Today, we're back in my hometown Sydney, Australia, the home of a massive coat hanger, pristine beaches, and bin chickens. Sydney's public transport is often one of the things that locals love to complain about. So today we're going to put it to the test by riding on the train, bus, and light rail, and see whether Sydney's public transport really is as bad as people say it is. Let's go and find out the truth about Sydney's public transport.
The next train to arrive on platform 1 goes to Penrith via Central. First stop.
So today my journey begins here in the North Shore suburb of Chatswood, a major transport interchange hub, which you can see here by the metro train just pulling into the station. Today is a particularly special day because it's leap day, the 29th of February at the time of filming, and it's also set to be 36 degrees today. So let's see how the Sydney train system copes under that kind of heat. The Sydney Trains network is known to break down under more pressing weather conditions, whether that's heavy rain, quite intense heat. Today is going to be a severe heat wave apparently, so let's see how that goes, and without further ado, let's board the train. To use the trains and buses and just Sydney transport in general, you need either a debit or credit card or an Opal card like I'll be using today. So use either one and you'll be good to go.
For your safety, please take extreme care. Surfaces may be slippery when wet.
So here I am at the end of the platform at Chatswood Station, and you can see there's a train coming here right now. That's the Waratah ASET. Cool thing about Sydney trains is that all of them are double decker, so get to see some of that here. And we're also in time for the peak hour commute, so it's around 7:50. Trains tend to get fairly busy, although I haven't woken up this early nor done this commute in a long time. So let's see how that's like. But this train actually looks not too crowded, which is good.
Strathfield, then all stations to Epping, and then all stations to Hornsby.
As we get into the train, you'll notice that there's the two decks I mentioned before. There's the upper and lower deck, so I'm going to walk through the lower deck just to show you guys what it looks like. And then I'm going to take a seat on the upper floor where my friend is. I'm personally quite a big fan of the interior of the ASET. It's well lit, fairly modern, and it has a nice information screen which tells you which stop you're at. And plus, all ASETs are air conditioned, which is a must on a hot day like this. Now the coolest feature of this train is that the seats are reversible, so you can flip the orientation to sit in the direction you want to, sit with a group of friends, whatever makes you comfortable. The train I'm on today is a standard T9 Northern Line service going to Hornsby via Central and Strathfield. The best part about this train ride, I think, is the magnificent views of the harbour that you get as you cross the harbour bridge into the city. Something which I definitely took for granted when I used to live here. Right, so we've just arrived in Wynyard Station, a central city stop, after a 23-minute train ride, which is fairly normal for a Chatswood to City commute. So far, things are going great. Before we go further though, I guess I should step back and explain how exactly I'm going to run this little experiment, to see whether Sydney's public transport is really as bad as people like to say it is. To do that, I'm going to ride on the three most common modes of transport, as determined by Transport NSW data, which is the train, bus, and light rail. The metro and ferry are modes I'll cover in a future video. I also want to capture a wide variety of commutes. That's going to consist of a typical peak hour commute, a university commute, as well as a tourist, recreational, off-peak commute. Doing this experiment at different times of the day for different purposes, hopefully will capture a general sense of what Sydney's public transport is like on a random day of the week, especially a hot day like today. Today's journey should hopefully encompass all those factors. We've just gone from Chatswood to the city, which is a typical morning peak commute, and now we're going to take the bus and train to Bondi Beach. From there, I'm going to do the Bondi to Coogee walk, and from Coogee, I'm going to take a bus to the University of New South Wales. From there, I'm going to take a light rail to the city. Later this evening, I'm then going to take an evening peak train from the city to Parramatta along the T1 Western Line, which is one of the busiest train lines in the New South Wales transport network.
Right, here we are at Wynyard Station in the heart of Sydney CBD. As you can see, the peak hour commute is still continuing and probably won't end for a couple, maybe 20 minutes. But yeah, overall that train ride was pretty good. In the back carriage it wasn't too crowded. I'm sure the middle carriages would have been a bit busier, and if I'd taken a later train, maybe like 10-15 minutes later, then it could have been a lot more crowded. So consider ourselves lucky there. But yeah, in the meantime, let's go get a coffee and then make our way to Bondi. Alright, so to get to Bondi, I want to take the T4 Eastern Suburbs line and then change for a bus from Bondi Junction. Now the train doesn't actually go all the way to Bondi, I think because of NIMBYs. That's a whole different story. But yeah, from Wynyard Station it's a lot closer to walk to Martin Place than to catch a train to Town Hall, which is also where the T4 goes, and then go from there. So I'm just doing that. It's like a block or two away. And as I'm doing that, I'm walking down on George Street, which they've recently pedestrianised. By recently I mean in the past several years. But this used to be a street where only cars and buses were allowed to go on, but now there's a light rail, which is starting to build up, and lots of footpath space for pedestrians, so really good urban improvement here in Sydney. Alright, we're here at Martin Place Station on the T4 Eastern Suburbs and Illawarra line. One thing I've just noticed, looks like during peak hour they actually reverse the direction of some of the escalators to serve people coming out of the station rather than going in. I guess that makes sense since this is a central city stop. But yeah, as a result there's only one escalator going down, 5 going up. Yeah, seems to be a train here every 4 minutes, so we should be pretty good. And let's see how that journey goes to Bondi Junction.
Conveniently enough for me, a train was pulling into the platform right as I'd arrived. This is a Tangara T-set train, which is the only type of train which runs along the T4 Eastern Suburbs and Illawarra line. Now, this is kind of unusual for Sydney trains, as most other lines in the network have a wider variety of rolling stock.
Then exit and Bondi Junction.
Doors closing. Please stand clear.
So we're on board the train now. As you can see, it's a lot quieter since a lot of people have just left the train, and I guess this is going away from the city during peak hour, the morning peak at least. Yeah, but this is a Tangara T-set train. I think the third, but it's one of the older trains in the city trains fleet. I'll correct that here. I've never really been a fan of this train. One reason is because of the intercom announcements. Sometimes that ding goes off and then you can barely hear what they're saying. It's like, and then also I don't like the fact that the seats aren't reversible. And this acrylic that they use here just tends to get really foggy as well, so you don't get a good view out the window. But I guess you can kind of see the city here in the background. But yeah. So I'm at stand D at Bondi Junction, and the bus has actually just arrived at 379, which will take us to the beach. Bit of a queue, but hopefully it won't be too much longer.
This time the queue wasn't too bad, but last week when I took the same bus from Bondi Junction to Bondi Beach, it was quite long. So, this is what the inside of a Sydney bus looks like. As you can see, it was really packed today, probably because it was such a good day to go to the beach. In terms of comfort, the Sydney bus is fine. It's as comfortable as a commuter bus gets, I guess. You know, it can be a bit bumpy and noisy sometimes, and if you're standing you can get jolted around quite a bit, but beyond that, it's fine. There's these little buttons on the top in which you can signal to the driver to stop, And when you leave the bus at your station, you just tap off on the Opal card readers on the side here.
Right, here we are in Bondi, or I believe North Bondi. Seems like there's a little restaurant and shopping district here. Yeah, so bus ride was fine, 10 minutes long, a lot of stops, but it was on time. It arrived as scheduled, so no complaints there. And here we are. Welcome to the world famous Bondi Beach. Anyway, yeah, look, I'm not much of a beach guy, so plan is to, well, my plan was to do the Bondi to Coogee walk, because I did that last week, and it's a very pleasant walk, but I think given the heat wave warning and the fact that this morning is already getting pretty hot, I think I'm going to cop out and not do the walk. Instead, I'll do a Bondi to Coogee bus. So let me look at that real quick and let's get going. Alright, so if I go down this path, that will lead me to the Bondi to Coogee coastal walk. Very beautiful. If you are in Sydney, or you're not from here but you plan to come here one day, I urge you to go do the walk. It's really beautiful. But now we're going this way, which is where the bus will be. Now, incidentally, there isn't a direct bus from Bondi Beach to Coogee Beach. So we actually have to go back to Bondi Junction with either the 333 or 380 bus, and then switch to a bus down to Coogee. So yes, I know in the context of this video, it looks a bit stupid. I'm like, I just came from Bondi Junction, but I guess the point is to demonstrate, if with the bus network, as with any bus network in the world, getting between two random suburbs can kind of be tricky. So we'll see what that's like here with having to change and all that. So let's do it. After a 3-minute wait, a 333 bus back towards Bondi had pulled in. This one was cool because it was one of the bendy buses. I had alluded to this point a little earlier on in the video, but this little journey from Bondi to Coogee actually highlights a pretty major shortcoming of Sydney's public transport network, which is that getting between two random points in the city can be quite difficult, particularly outside of the rail network and as you get to the farther out suburbs. You'll notice that most lines in the Sydney train network go through the CBD, and that there's a distinct lack of north-south lines directly connecting major hubs, such as between Hurstville and Parramatta. This increases journey times for passengers wanting to get between Sydney suburbs, as they now have to go through the CBD to get to their destination. This also places more pressure on the entire rail network. With most trains routing through the city, one failure at Town Hall or Wynyard could have a knock-on effect on the entire rail system. Well, here we are at Coogee Beach. Let's just pretend that I did the entire 6-kilometer walk from Bondi and ended up from there, and did not just come out of the bus. But anyway, again, pretty decent bus ride. Shaved off around 10 minutes by sprinting to this 350. If I'd waited for the next one, the more realistic commute might be adding an extra 10 minutes onto this. But as a result, we're ahead of schedule, which is good. So yeah, let me chill for a bit, and then we'll make our way to our next destination. Alright, so it's time to head back. So I'm going to head back to the city and do the errands I was meant to go there for. But I'm going to drop by UNSW for two reasons. The first is I want to try... Seagulls are really aggro, as you'd expect. Anyway, I want to drop by UNSW, mainly to try out the light rail that was finished a few years ago from UNSW to the city. It replaced a bunch of the old bus routes which used to go directly to the uni. And also, I spent a semester there a few years ago, so it's kind of nostalgic. I haven't been there for a while, so want to check it out too. Soon enough, the next bus came to shuttle me from Coogee to UNSW. I love these buses which have these seats at the front, which offers a really good view, and more importantly, great B-roll. We arrived at UNSW, where I went for a wee wander around the old stomping grounds before proceeding to my next destination. There were a horde of students that had just arrived at the Anzac Parade UNSW stop, which was my indication to go in the exact opposite direction to them. Alright, so we're here at the UNSW Anzac Parade light rail station. So let's wait for the next tram or light rail to come. In the meantime, tapping on the light rail is at these little pillars which are spaced throughout, not on the actual light rail itself. This is actually something I only learned pretty recently because I don't take the light rail too often.
The L3 appeared to have an off-peak frequency of 7 minutes. The light rail itself is relatively new and is quite quiet and comfortable. At the time of filming, light rail service in Sydney had 3 lines, with this one travelling between Circular Quay in the city and Kingsford. However, since I'm really slow at editing these videos, the light rail has since expanded between Parramatta and Carlingford as part of Sydney's rapidly growing public transportation network.
So we are at Central Station, and I could technically take a train to Wynyard from here. Most lines go through the city circle, so it wouldn't be hard to find one. But I'm a bit lazy, so I'm just going to stay on the light rail and go to Wynyard that way, even though it's slightly slower. But in between walking to platforms and waiting for trains, it may end up being the same amount of time.
The light rail passes right through George Street in the city, where I was headed earlier. Unfortunately, it's a rather expensive way to travel up and down the city, as fares can cost up to $3.20 just to get you from one end of the city to the other. That being said, it can be pretty useful if you do need to get up and down the city pretty quickly, and most importantly, with great air conditioning.
Alright, so back at Wynyard, back in the city. That tram from UNSW only took around 25 minutes. Nice and air conditioned. That wasn't super busy too, since I guess all the uni students weren't coming home yet. Yeah, so far pretty decent experience on the buses, trains and light rail. Alright, so we're here at Central Station to do the last leg of today's video. It is kind of in the middle peak hour at 6 PM, and I want to take a train on the T1 Western Line from Central, which has recently been renovated actually, looks quite nice, to Parramatta. So there's a couple options. You can take the Blue Mountains Express train on platform 4, but that's leaving in a minute and I don't think I'm going to make that. So let's take the regular train, the T1 Western Suburbs line, on platform 18. Oh, let's go through the back.
I realised I'd gone on the wrong train when the onboard screen said that one of the stops was North Strathfield, which is on the T9 line. This meant that I'd have to change trains at Strathfield to get towards Parramatta.
Alright, so we're here at Strathfield. Accidentally got on the wrong train, but the next one on the same platform will go to Parramatta on the Western Line, and we'll continue our way towards there.
The ride was largely uneventful, and whilst the train was busy, it wasn't completely packed. Peak hour trains tend to have standing only room, so this was actually a little surprising. We arrived at Parramatta 30 minutes after we had left Central, which was quite quick, especially considering my stuff up from before. Clearly, a lot of other commuters were also alighting at Parramatta, which makes sense given that it's a major hub in Western Sydney.
So we finally arrived at Parramatta, where this journey is going to come to an end.
So what's the verdict? Overall, I think that Sydney has a pretty good public transport network, especially for a metro region of its size. There's a very diverse range of transport modes, frequent train services for a suburban rail network, and quite extensive bus coverage throughout the entire metro area. Public transport is the backbone of the lives for so many Sydneysiders, with many of us relying on it to get to work, school, and uni. Despite what the naysayers may think, I also think that the trains have gotten more reliable over the years, but of course, in more recent months, this has been put to the test with the ongoing disputes between the New South Wales government and the rail unions. Now, of course, there's more issues, with the biggest one being connectivity between many suburbs within the Greater Sydney area. Also, having all the train lines converge in the CBD is just poor design, and makes the system significantly more prone to delays, whether that be through bad weather, accidents, or signalling issues. However, I think that there's great strides being made to relieve the pressure off of the city circle, and to help provide better connections between the suburbs. The best example is the rapid expansion of the Sydney Metro, which is the most exciting development to the region's public transport for a very long time, and will help to strengthen what I think at heart is a very solid public transport system.